Good day and welcome to another Announcements Weekly Wraps. I'm Viv Govender, and as usual what we'll do is we'll go over some macroeconomic, general economic stories at the start and do a little text segment at the end. In our macro text stories, basically we're going to cover two things. Firstly, the spate of companies that are leaving South Africa at the moment, and secondly, we'll look at US-China trade tensions. In our text segment, we'll look at two developments. Firstly, following up on our coverage of Tesla, developments around 12.4, the newest model of Tesla's full self-driving software, and then in more news from Google / Alphabet, we got Alphafold 3 coming out, a new development in terms of its protein molecules, basically biological molecules research program. Okay, so let's start off with the general stories. BNP Paribas is leaving South Africa. This comes after news that Shell is leaving, or possibly leaving. And we've also had, recently, speculation that the Anglo-American BHP deal is another, vote of no confidence in South Africa, because of the fact that BHP was basically Anglo-American without the South African assets, notably Kumba and Anglo-Plats. Now, this story is obviously, it is itself not a huge deal, BNP Paribas leaving, because of course it's a reasonably small player. South Africa has a very well-developed financial sector, and even if a very large bank like BNP leaves, which is one of the top 10 banks globally and one of the biggest banks, not the biggest bank I think in Europe, it doesn't really make a difference in terms of the actual products being offered to South Africans. It's not just South Africa, by the way, it's leaving the entire of Africa to focus on Europe and Asia. So a couple of things to be pointed out here. Firstly, yes, it does make a big deal in terms of what's happening with regards to the facilities available to South African consumers. But what it does point to is a narrative change. Now, you must understand when it comes to investing, when it comes to business, that they are numbers, they are basically facts and figures, etc. But there's also a certain kind of narrative that needs to be fulfilled to a lot of things to go through. One of the most famous economists of all times, John Maynard Keynes, referred to them as animal spirits. There needs to be certain kind of irrationality to how you proceed in terms of investing, in terms of how you proceed in terms of moving money around and so on. And not irrationality, but more intuition. You believe in a story, and therefore you kind of follow that story through. The story right now in Africa and South Africa is looking particularly bleak. If you look at where things were, say, 5+ years ago, we saw articles from The Economist talking about Africa rising and so on. The kind of narrative that was around is that China rose in the 1990s. We saw India start to rise about 10 years ago, and the next 10 years are going to be when Africa starts to rise, and that's going to be obviously the same kind of opportunity. China, the biggest, if not the second biggest economy in the world. India, number 4 in the world at the moment, probably going to be number 3 within the next 5 years, probably less than 5 years, the third largest economy in the world. Both of them have come back from quite bad economic situations. China very poor in the 1970s, 80s, and then started growing in the 1990s. India, I think by the mid-80s, was the 13th largest economy in the world, 1-3, smaller than places like France, Italy, and so on. And now it's a larger economy than the UK, Germany. Significant improvement in terms of size and of course economic growth. And if a similar thing had happened in Africa, then you would expect that a company like BNP Paribas, etc., would have found opportunity here. The fact that they are basically saying no, they're saying we'd rather focus on basically stagnant Europe, which is very rich but not growing at all, and Asia, which is not as rich but growing very fast, is better than focusing on Africa, which right now is both not rich and not growing very fast. Unfortunately, it's a bad overall trend, and to a certain extent, this is something that I'll be seeing also coming through with regards to some of the regulatory stuff happening around, South Africa. We had stuff around Gwyneth talking about the fact that, Anglos basically he was on the board of Anglos, he would have said no to the deal because of the negativity on South Africa. It's not up to him to say about whether or not a company wants to invest in here because of the negativity or not. If it's a good deal for shareholders, it's a good deal for shareholders, and therefore you should just basically take it. Those kind of company considerations or country considerations should not really matter. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that we are seeing also negativity around South Africa in particular, is the regulatory uncertainty that's happening in the country. There's rumors around Shell and TAB investments, and the link with the ANC as well, and whether or not that's one of the driving forces for them possibly leaving the country. So yeah, it's a pretty negative story right now around investing in Africa, especially by foreigners. That being said, I do think that there's still possibilities in the continent. It's probably like Warren Buffett says, time to invest is when people are being fearful, and time to be exploited is when people are being greedy. And right now people are being fearful, so probably it is the opportunity to look at investments in Africa as a probably they're going to be priced cheaper than they should be. The next story, let's look at what's happening with China and the US. So we've had the TikTok banning progressing through. TikTok, of course, is, for those that don't know, like a video servicing a video service. You watch videos on it. It's owned by a non-Chinese government entity, but there's belief that it's the Chinese government that effectively runs it. And the fear around TikTok is there's the belief that it's using its app to harvest data from Americans, and there's even a rumor that that the app is a kind of psychological warfare against Americans. People are saying that TikTok in America gives you pictures of people acting stupidly, as few things like breaking into Kia cars and people basically hitting other people in the streets and whatnot. Whereas in China, their version, which is not TikTok but another kind of company that does the same thing, kind of shows people engaging in sporting activity or scientific research and that kind of stuff as their kind of driving force. But irrespective of what's been happening there, it does indicate a longer term trend of US-China relations really worsening. If somehow we could see China-US relations getting better over the next couple of decades, who knows, with the change of administration in either China or the US, or some kind of sea change in terms of outlook between the two countries, we would see a significant improvement in global growth. I think this is a very important, one of the big drivers, I think, in terms of the last couple of decades of global growth, has been the integration of China into the global economic system. China has been the world's manufacturer. China has basically brought in this huge workforce of like 1 billion people almost into workers basically into the global economy, and that's mostly helped boost economic growth. It's one of the reasons inflation has been low for a long time. This is extra capacity offered by China. If China was to reverse some of these trends, we could see a reversal of not just the prosperity, but also in terms of things like inflation reduction and so on. And so yeah, the flare-up in tensions between China and the US is very important to watch out for. And TikTok is just one of these things. There's been also moves in terms of AI, chip, production. The Biden administration has basically effectively banned Americans from working for Chinese companies that work on AI. They've banned the export of certain high-level chip manufacturing equipment to China. The Chinese, on the other hand, are basically looking at trying to get around that. One of the things we saw recently was Huawei with having this, better than expected 7-nanometer chipset. Later on, turned out that apparently they got that through obtaining in rather maybe grey ways some equipment from ASML, but so it wasn't entirely developed. But China has a lot of smart people. Eventually, they are going to figure a way out to basically start making their own chips, to start making their own stuff. Maybe not at the same level as the US or Europe, but maybe not 5 years behind, maybe 18 months behind. Eric Schmidt said that he thinks that China is about 3 years behind the US when it comes to things like AI and chip manufacturing and so on. I probably think it's probably a little less than that, and over time we can never guarantee that an 18-month lead is eternal. Next, moving on to our tech segment, we're going to talk about firstly the newest stuff from Tesla. FSD, full self-driving 12.4 is coming out. Apparently it's going to remove, according to Elon Musk, the nag feature. The nag feature is basically, if you're driving in a full self-driving vehicle, the vehicle has to detect that you have your hands on the steering wheel every so often to show that you're paying attention to the road. The reason for this is they don't quite trust full self-driving as yet, and therefore they want drivers to be aware. So if there's something that does happen, that the vehicle starts maybe driving you off a bridge or something, you want to be able to take control and make sure that you don't die. The fact that they're removing that, according to Elon Musk, we haven't had official confirmation from Tesla, but Elon Musk says they are, means that the most recent level of full self-driving is incredibly, reliable. Because look, I mean, to a certain extent, that whole Nike feature was, cosmetic too, because you could easily buy stuff from Alibaba that would effectively mimic your hand on the steering wheel and therefore kind of fool the vehicle. They specifically are designed to do that. But just to give Tesla some kind of coverage that they say people must drive with their hands on wheels. So if there is a mess up, it's not Tesla's fault. That I think has been important for the company. But if we are at a point now where full self-driving is at a point where we don't need to have that kind of cover for Tesla, it doesn't indicate it's getting a lot better. A couple of things to consider here is that what does it mean for a company like Uber? Uber's entire business model is effectively tying up these drivers and having them you type the drivers, you type the customers, then you effectively have the middleman feature of Uber, kind of reaping the benefits. And if you do have, however, self-driving vehicles, there's no more drivers to worry about, and then the only thing you have to worry about is the customer. And then it's a much easier job to basically replace an Uber than it is right now. We have to basically firstly get the drivers in place and then get the customers in place to make sure that you have that kind of synergy happening there. So yeah, I think if this is true, I think you have to look very carefully at what Uber's pricing is at the moment and whether or not they are a viable concern going forward. The next thing and the biggest thing we'll talk about today is something called Alphafold 3. Now, I've talked about Alphafold in the past, which was the ability to actually determine the shape of molecules, protein molecules, based on their formula. This is one of the key drivers, one of the key achievements of AI over the last couple of years. Yes, we talk about LLMs, we talk about AlphaGo, we talk about all those kind of things, Deep Blue, and we talk about the chess programs and so on. But in reality, some of the science being done behind the scenes by things like Alphafold has been one of the most important things that AI has done. Like what Alphafold did was, like I said, you give a formula, you get the shape of a molecule. Until Alphafold came about, this technically doing that for one molecule was almost a PhD thesis. So you want to get a PhD in basically molecular biology, go and find the shape of a single molecule out there. That's pretty much enough to get you a thesis, like a PhD out of you. When Alphafold came about, they basically went and solved this for virtually every single molecule out there. All the molecules they found in biology, effectively, a couple 100 million of them. So this is a couple 100 million PhDs of work was done by this program. What Alphafold 3 does is it goes a bit further. Now it allows you to do some interactions. It allows you to know when proteins are bonding and what kind of strength the bond is going to be, etc. This is, now firstly you can identify what the parts are. Now you know how the parts work together. Huge improvement. It probably will make it much easier to develop drugs, because if you want to have a specific drug interact with a specific protein or specific molecule in your body, now you know exactly, within a certain margin of error. This is not 100% science, but they're 90+% accurate, with a greater level of accuracy what molecule to make to do this particular thing. So this is a huge step forward. And like I said, it's not a case of it's 100% perfect, but it's more than 90% perfect. So it effectively cuts out more than 90% of the work required to find these kind of drugs, because now you know that you want to attach something to this particular site on a DNA molecule or into a cell or whatever. You know how to design that protein and create that protein that's going to do this for you, because this thing will tell you what protein bonds and tells you what the shape of that protein is going to be. It also tells you what the formula of that protein is going to be, and then you're just going to make it. So, huge development in terms of pharmaceuticals. And the head of DeepMind has come out and said this could be as much as $100 billion opportunity in pharmaceuticals. I think it could be larger if it does work, especially because of the fact that Alphafold came out only a couple of years ago, and then we have Alphafold 3. Alphafold took him a couple of years ago. Alphafold 3 is out now. This does indicate, in terms of the jump, a significant jump, showing that the underlying technology still has the power to scale. There's no plateauing of the S-curve just yet, which gives us confidence that maybe Alphafold 4 could do even more things that we don't, that 3 can't do right now. And if that's the case, in a couple of years' time, we can see that thing coming out. This could really improve the amount of capacity in the world at the moment. And to give you an idea just how important this is, I mean, if you look at countries like the UK, the US, Australia's an outlier even higher. We're talking double-digit percentage of the workforce, like 10+% of the workforce is involved in healthcare. looking at the US, looking at the UK, looking at most developed countries, healthcare is one of the biggest, basically, expenditures as a sector in the entire economy. And if this thing basically does what it says it's going to do, and the improvement that we expect for the next version, the version after that, do come to be true, you could literally be designing, individualized medicines for yourself, within 5 years or 6 years from now, on particular, diseases, particular biological issues you may have based on your, own individual DNA. This is, I think, worth significantly more than $100 billion business. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to speaking to you guys again next week. Cheers.